good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever it is you are. I'll be sharing my screen shortly to begin with my presentation, but to be specific, my session would be geared towards AI-driven research tools. So tools that we can expect to use for research that are most likely going to be AI-powered. As a preamble, I'd like to first and foremost state that people tend to assume that AI is just for people developing AI. But here's a case whereby the world is kind of growing beyond that. So we tend to produce tools out there that are heavily AI dependent, but don't necessarily require that you are AI savvy to use per se. So we're looking at examples of that in my very brief presentation. All right. So thank you all very much for this special opportunity to give a talk at this seminar. So the theme for today is on the role of AI in higher education research. And to briefly introduce myself before we get into my presentation, I'm Tawfiq Musa. I am currently a research assistant and engineer at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research in Tropical Medicine. Most of my work involves the development of machine learning tools, mainly geared towards application in healthcare. So in essence, you could say I'm a machine learning engineer, but it's mainly geared towards it being used in the research area. But outside of my work at KCCR, I have other things I like doing, including participating in hackathons, competitive programming, video game development, and so on and so forth. So just trying to talk about how sometimes you can be multifaceted as to what it is that you're trying to do. So jumping straight into it, I'm going to talk about two main things, which is AI-driven research tools, and then their ethical and societal implications. Okay. But then the question is that what's an AI-driven research tool? We are often limited in how we think about AI tools, to the extent that we think that maybe it's just any tool at all that is being highly augmented by AI. For instance, you can think about something like ChatGPT, but very much intentionally in the example that I have here, I have no mention of a tool like ChatGPT, right? Because there are other tools out there that can better assist you in exactly what you are doing, other than large language models that are just mainly specialized at regurgitating maybe either existing knowledge or sometimes also making up facts on the go. There have been recent cases of people using ChatGPT within their research work, and they've used it to the extent whereby it's very obvious, such that you can like maybe do a general keyword search and realize that there are words in there that it's only stuff like ChatGPT will come up with. And also sometimes they even forget and then they add the prompt to their research papers and it's found, and then it can end up that your papers get rejected or your research as a whole is not well respected, or it could even be published and then the outside world would get to see it and then maybe criticize it even more than if it was just rejected straight on. So it's very important that we know the type of research tools that we pick to use and which ones would help us best. So yeah, there are a lot of other tools out there that are AI driven. And the first one that I would like to make mention of is ResearchGate. So some of us know ResearchGate as a basic research environment that shares papers. Here's the case whereby they've been able to, in the past, improve on their offerings, especially in their use of AI. So on ResearchGate right now, you can use AI to find relationships between articles that you might not be able to find, assuming you just did a normal basic search. But then that's not even the best part of it, is that there are other tools out there that can integrate with ResearchGate and then give you a much better experience, especially with the literary review process. And my favorite one for that is a tool called SciSpace. So Sciencebase is an environment for both reading papers, finding papers, and also performing literary review on a very large scale. Yeah. And it's somewhat free for students to some extent. It depends on the amount, the length in which you use it. And I mean, definitely there will be some limitations, right? But then Sciencebase is one of the best tools that you can use out there. And it uses it uses some concepts in like AI, for example, natural language processing, to find, once again, relationships within literature that you might not always consider. Because sometimes you might be trying to do research into a particular topic, and then you just do a general search, and then you find other articles that are related to that topic. But then here's a case whereby it's not a deep search, because what happens is that the general search that you do will just maybe look at the titles of papers. But then sometimes there's more information within the methodology and conclusions that you wouldn't find within the title. So that's why it's important that you're able to use tools like Sciencebase and ResearchGate to do in-depth research, which has been augmented by artificial intelligence to help you find relevant work for what you're trying to do. Additionally, one other tool that falls within this category is Semantic Scholar. It works almost like Google Scholar, but then it also tries to do what ResearchGate and Sciencebase are doing. But each of these tools have their upsides and downsides. So definitely you would have to explore and find the right balance in what works for you. Right. So when we talk about research tools, it's not just limited to these tools that can help you within your literary review process. There are other tools that can help you further beyond that. For example, you have a methodology that is computer related, and it's like it requires some amount of simulation and validation. In that case, there are a lot of simulation tools out there that you can use, but one of the ones that I've had the most familiarity with is with MATLAB and Simulink, right? So imagine you've been able to design a system and you can validate whether or not your system works. MATLAB and Simulink are somewhat AI dependent, and you can integrate AI tools within them to then be able to do your methodology validation and so on and so forth. Your work does not have to be AI related, but then definitely the AI can come in there to help augment the process, right? So we shouldn't limit ourselves to working without AI, maybe because we think that our work is not AI related. Because most of the work that we do can definitely be augmented and helped by AI. And additionally, too, we have scikit-learn. Okay. In the definition of AI-driven tools here, the examples I have here is machine learning in general, natural language processing, and data analysis. So there are people that do research that has to do with a lot of data, but then it's not necessarily data science or AI. For example, people working in public health and global health research would often come across a large amount of patient data. But here's a case whereby they are not necessarily doing gathering that data for AI-related purposes. They might just be trying to find some relationship between some factors that cause a disease and what are the confounders within that, and like how do they remove that? And then they would have to perform some form of statistical analysis to be able to do that in a much simpler way. And yet again, it is AI-driven tools that can help in that regard. And one of the most popular ones when it comes to tabular type of data that you'd use in stuff like global health and public health, and so on and so forth. It's scikit-learn, which is the last example that we have at the bottom right corner, scikit-learn. But additionally, there are several others out there that I would advise you look into and find and see which ones fits best for the type of work that you're trying to do. Because definitely maybe you might be trying to do some simulation work, but then it wouldn't be MATLAB or Simulink that would help. There are several tools out there that you can look into to help you in that regard. Okay. So let's look at the core applications of AI in research. As we made mention of earlier, the first few tools that we looked at were mainly geared towards literature review. So you want to perform literature review on a very large scale, but then you don't have all the papers at hand, and you don't really know which keywords to even use. So some of these tools can help you in that regard. And also data analysis and visualization. We spoke about stuff like scikit-learn, and how they can help in the data analysis process. There are other tools too that can add on to scikit-learn to help you with the visualization process, something like matplotlib or Seaborn. But then although that's not necessarily AI powered, they work in tangent with stuff like scikit-learn. And additionally, we have simulation and modeling, which is where Simulink and MATLAB come into play. But again, I'd advise that you look into other options that are more suitable for some type of research that you're doing. If you're looking at stuff like simulation and modeling in the realm of computer engineering, electrical engineering, you would want to look at Simulink and MATLAB. If you're looking at stuff that are outside of that, like maybe mechanical engineering, modeling, and so on and so forth, you start looking at tools like ANSYS and some other FEA-related tools, right? And finally, the last thing that we can talk about in core applications of AI in research is AI-assisted writing. Okay. So when I say AI-assisted writing, I don't mean that you have a topic you want to write about, and then you tell AI, the AI system, and then the AI system will just write the entire thing down for you, right? What it rather represents is that there are tools out there that can help you in the writing process, right? They are supposed to somewhat maybe guide you and hold your hand and help you come out with something that is representative of the work that you're trying to discuss. Not that you just give a prompt to ChatGPT or any of those large language models and then just get a full output of text that is talking about your research. And often when you do that, you can notice that the models tend to make a lot of mistakes and hallucinations. So which is where the issue comes in, as I spoke about earlier, when people publish research and then it's riddled with mistakes. And sometimes people find keywords and even the prompts that people put in, and you realize that, oh, it seems like this person didn't put any effort into their research work. It's all just ChatGPT generated. And it brings us nicely into the second part of the talk that I wanted us to get into, which is the ethical and societal implications, right? So it's very important that we look at the ethical and societal aspect of this. And I believe Amina will be the best person to go in more in this, as her work looks closely at the ethical aspects of AI too, and maybe natural language processing. So yeah, there's some amount of integrity that is expected from you as a researcher that you have to try and uphold. And in upholding that, definitely you would have to know that there are some things that you don't do in the background, like going for fully generated AI text and then presenting it as research offset. And also you have to be accountable to how you use these AI tools, right? But at this point, it's kind of self-accountability. And finally, too, there has to be a balance between how you use these AI tools and how much effort you put on your own side of things and coming out with very good research work, right? So with all of that in mind, I believe it's clear to us now as to how we can use some of these AI-driven research tools in our everyday research, especially in higher education. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. You can always get in touch if you have further questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Topet. That was brief and very, very insightful. We'll take a couple of questions. Please, if you have any question, just write it in the chat or you can unmute. We'll be taking about 5 questions. Then we can move on to the next session. If you have a question, please, you could feel free to unmute and speak, or better still, write it in the chat, then we can read it up for Tofik to answer. So Tofik, I have a question that has been bothering my mind when it comes to research. People are, I think there's a lot of buzz around AI up till now. My question is, since certain papers have been written, certain papers have been retracted because of this AI usage. So my question is, does that mean that when you are working on your research, by any means, you are not allowed to get some context or some write-ups from these AI? Does that mean that I have to do everything from right straight up from my head?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very important question to ask. One thing that you notice as of late is when some of these conferences come out with a call for papers, and you look at the ethical sections of it, they make very clear about how they expect their authors to use AI tools. At this point, we can no longer go back on whether or not AI is here to stay, because definitely it's here to stay. But it's important as to how we use it. So one of the things that some of these journals try to make very clear is that the AI tool isn't there to do the research for you. It's there to maybe assist you in some aspects, maybe one way or the other, but not necessarily there to produce new information, because these AI systems definitely can produce new information. All the information that they produce is based on already existing information. So often what they advise is that instead of using these tools to write up your entire paper, just try writing out a first draft. And then maybe if there are mistakes in there that you might need to be looked at and corrected, you can look at some of these tools and see how they can assist you in that process. But it's as I said, like the disclaimer section in some of these conferences and the publishers can be very informative as to how they expect you to use AI. For example, I think Deep Learning Indaba recently made a call for papers. If you'd find in the website, they make a clear mention as to how they expect you to use AI. So most of us asking us whether using stuff like ChatGPT for multiple times a day can affect his writing and learning process in general in a bad way.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, these things are just tools, right? What matters is in how we use them. For example, let's say you're given an assignment and one student just takes the assignment, gives it to chat, and then gets the answers and then produces and then gives that answer to the lecturer, versus the second student that takes that same assignment, tries to do it, and then might find difficulty in the process, right? But even within the process of finding difficulty, there's some stuff there that they might learn, even if it's not necessarily learning the actual answers, they learn within the process. But then they still go ahead to give those same questions to ChatGPT, and then they get something that looks like an answer. What will happen at the end of the day is that the second person here will definitely end up benefiting more from that. And they might even be able to tell whether or not ChatGPT is making mistakes. Unlike the first person that just takes a question, gives it to chat, gets an answer, and then moves on. Definitely, that's not something that we should try and emulate. And also, when it comes to the learning process, it's important that you know how to use AI to learn, because some of these learning materials that you have, you can always give it to these AI systems, like maybe set questions for you, create flashcards, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of creative ways that you can look at in how you use these AI tools. And another question was on generation of AI content. So can one paraphrase it to make it clean? I would say it's not about maybe using the AI system to create a paragraph and then paraphrasing it. It should rather be that you've created your own original idea of a paragraph and you are giving it to an AI system to then maybe help you refine it and make it better. I think that will be the end of my session. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Taufik. That was a wonderful session with you. So, without much ado, I just want to hand over to the moderator to take the panelist discussion, and afterwards we take our Q&A. Then we bring the session to an end. So I hand over to the moderator, Mr. Evans, if you're around. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I can be heard clearly.
Yes, please. You are very audible and clear.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Taufik, too, for such an insightful presentation. So we are going to have a panelist discussion where all the questions that people wanted to ask and all the insightful people are looking for will be reviewed by our great panelists that we have on board. So we have the two very experts who will be taking us through this panelist discussion. So on the panelists, we have Mr. Richard Appel. And when I saw this program, and I saw his picture, I went to LinkedIn to read more about him. And I saw that indeed, the youth in AI did a very good job by bringing Mr. Richard Apple, because when you read his profile alone, it tells you that he has a lot to deliver, and he has done and impacted a lot of people as well. Not only him, and as you know, Mr. Richard Apple, he's a system analyst currently at African Union Counter-Terrorism Center. So if he has such a man coming to give us some insightful ideas, then it means that we need to pay much attention to it. Also on board, you have Amina, who is also a PhD student and also currently at the Responsible AI Lab. So you can imagine a female who has taken that note to go into this level, not anything like IT with mathematics and diverting to AI and other stuff. So it means that she has a lot to give us. So let's be patient, pay attention, and all the necessary questions that we need to ask will be asked. Then they will give us every question that you want them to answer. I'm sure by the close of today, everybody will be carrying such an insightful ideas from this great personality. So first on board, I want to engage Mr. Richard Apple. So Mr. Richard Apple, if you can hear me clearly, kindly introduce yourself and your background and tell us how it has brought you to how you got to this level. So if you can clearly hear me, kindly tell us more about yourself, your background, and how you have gotten to this level.
Hello, Evans, can you hear me?
Yes, you can be heard clearly.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. And first of all, I want to thank the Youth in AI group for this opportunity to share knowledge with the esteemed guests that we have and people coming from across the continent. I noticed that people are joining from many areas to participate in that. And then again, today being 8th of March, I would want to also start by wishing the brilliant women that we have that have joined this group, Happy International Women's Day, and ask that the action be projected. And I'm very happy that I'm also on this panel with Amina, who is traveling and doing a lot of things in the STEM field. On the introduction, I thought that what you mentioned was enough introduction, but basically my name is Richard Appel and I work for the African Union at the African Union Counter-Terrorism Center, which is based in Algiers. I work as a systems analyst at the center, and then I do coordinate the center's cybersecurity capability program, which is the continental cybersecurity program that tends to build African Union member state capacity on how to prevent the threat of the cyberspace. I do also serve on the AU committee, the African Union Working Group on Artificial Intelligence. And then I am a co-chair for the AU Task Force on Cybersecurity. And so basically you could realize that I have a background in cybersecurity. I actually used to be in academia. So before joining the AU, I was teaching at one of the new universities that was established. It's called the Akintena Piaminka University of Science, Entrepreneurial, which is based in Kumasi. And before then, I've taught in, I think, 5 other universities, including KNUST, Academic City University College, Kempa, and then University of Education. I think basically this is okay. And so that is the little I would say about myself. I don't know if this will surface, Evans.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my first question to you like if you can tell us what, cybersecurity is a new area and is something that maybe a lot of the youth will like to maybe engage in it. So you want to know what really inspired you to start a career in cybersecurity. If you can tell us what really inspired you to start a career in cybersecurity.
Well, actually, so I have a background in computer science. So I did my first degree in computer science at KNOST. And then after, I also did my first master's in computer science also at Tech. And so computer science has so many aspects, I mean specializations. And so as you move on, you will decide which area you want to move to. But actually, cybersecurity is not a new area. It's been there for a very long time, except that it has now gained popularity in recent times due to emerging technologies, due to advanced technologies, and including automation of business processes. So what it means is that organizations and countries are now regularly being exposed to the threat of cyberspace. You can take it from the aspect of national security, from computer security, from organizational perspective. Even now, when it comes to war, we are saying that the cyberspace has now become the fifth battleground, because initially, countries were just focusing on securing their borders, securing the sea, going into the space, or securing even the airspace. But now, with the way technology is emerging, we have noticed that cybersecurity, because of cyberspace becoming the fifth battleground, then it means that cybersecurity has become very important aspect of our daily life. And so, like I mentioned, the digitization processes of many organizations and countries then has exposed it to a lot of cyber attacks. And so even before COVID, we noticed how much organizations were being attacked, and COVID actually came to worsen the situation. Now, whilst I noticed that the cyber threat keep increasing, for example, even in Ghana, the Bank of Ghana report indicates that at least every year, we lose close to about 400 million just on the banking sector to cyber fraud. But then I also noticed that the space in Ghana was not well developed. And so we didn't have a lot of people with cybersecurity capabilities. And a lot of our investors were not even running programs in cybersecurity. So I decided that, okay, so I will go and do and specialize in cybersecurity. And that's how I went to the UK to do my second master in cybersecurity. And I started practicing in the field of cybersecurity. And it's been an amazing, because there's a lot of opportunities in the area. It provides opportunity for learning. And it's all about trying to ensure that the cyberspace in Africa, and being specifically the cyberspace in Ghana, is secure. And to also ensure that we have the human resources to train quite a number of people. And so I'm even happy that these days, GEMPA and KNUST all have come up with dedicated programs on cybersecurity and digital forensics. And so that was the basis of the inspiration.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's such an inspiring story. So, as today we are talking about it, can you tell us the cybersecurity practice which researchers need to know when using AI?
So if I get a question, but I don't know, because your internet was a bit off, but if I get a question right, you say that what are some of the cybersecurity practices researchers need to follow when working with AI? Yeah, it is that bit.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, I quite listened very well to the first presenter when he mentioned some of the tools that are available for research. And like he rightly mentioned, you see, the point is that we've used AI for a very long time, but some of the things we didn't even know that it is AI that we were using. Because in our daily life, a lot of the things that we use, the predictive analysis, sometimes even when you are typing, you realize that there was a suggestion that come to you. When you are writing even email, there was a suggestion that come to you, because the platform look at the sentences you have typed before and assume what should follow next. Some of them call it autocorrect. These are all AI capabilities that have been infused into our daily life, just so it makes our life very simple. And so, like the first presenter mentioned, AI remains a very important tool in academia, being it higher education research, and facilitate and supposed to make our life simple. But there are practices, just as he mentioned that he mentioned AI assisted writing. I'm sure maybe as part of the discussion we'll get into it and throw more light on what we mean by AI assisted writings and analysis. But when you are using AI tools, the most important consideration has to do about the data protection. Because if you're a researcher and you're using AI tools, you're analyzing people's data. And so data protection remains very important aspect of research. Even with that AI, every researcher has to take a lot of cautions when you are dealing with data. If you are in the US or you are in the Europe, they will normally tell you about the GDPR. And so these are one consideration. So if you have taken people's data and you want to use AI tools to analyze the data, then there was a consideration of practice of how your tool will not be able to compromise the data that you have taken. And then again, there was AI and the human collaboration. And so here we are talking about the human oversight, which is very important. You see, AI is a trained machine that has been fed with data to behave in a certain way based on the input to give out an output. And so it's not accurate to say that everything an AI gives you is perfect. And so there was a need for human the AI collaboration, where the human being serves as an oversight to what the AI is bringing out. And so you need to check the validity and reliability of the result the AI is giving you to be able to determine its accuracy. Other than that, you end up producing results that are not really authentic, because indeed, artificial intelligence is not to replace human intelligence. It's rather to facilitate and make the work of the human being simple. And so it doesn't mean that you use the AI tools and whichever outcome it comes, then you just go with it. And then again, it has to also do with what we call responsible AI development. If you are using AI in research, then some of the practices has to do with the issues of ethical dilemma, because AI tools then bring issues of ethics, there are legal implications, and then also there are accountability issues in there, because you are producing a research. How accountable are you? Is the AI the one doing the work for you, or the AI is supposed to support your work? And so for researchers, students, and even those in academia, lecturers, these are some of the practices that one will have to look out for when they intend to make use of AI with the perspective of cybersecurity implications. Because of course, even in cybersecurity, we use AI, and these practices are important. And of course, I have to add that AI itself has rather increased the workload on cybersecurity professionals, because immediately any new technology comes, then it has implication on cybersecurity also. Thank you.
So my next question is, what would be your advice to the young ones when it comes to this research that you normally use? What would be your advice to young who want to build maybe solutions, educational solution in Africa? What advice can you give us?
So in terms of young people, I think what I would say is that, you see, context is very important. And so young people really need to understand the context. They have to be able to use AI to build local solutions that is tailored in solving local problems. Let's take, for example, in the context of Ghana. We all know that galamsey is a big issue in the country. And so the question we have to ask ourselves that in the advent of artificial intelligence, how can young people be able to use technology to contribute in solving problems such as the galamsey? So that if it is possible that a solution can become out of it, such that if we are talking about forest reserves, then we can have a geofencing embedded with artificial intelligence algorithm, such that even if we are supposed to have cameras and then a human being is in the forest, then whoever is in the control room can be able to know that in this part of the forest, there was an object that is moving, and that object that is moving is human being. Because now we even have cameras where the camera tried to scan around. If the camera notices that the movement is human being, that's computer vision. Once the camera detects that this movement is in motion, and so it's human being, it then tends to zoom in the person. Once it's identified as a human being, if it's an animal, it will not zoom the person. But once you see that the pattern resembles movement of human being, the camera will then zoom in the person and then bring the person closer to the camera for the camera to capture the person. This is what AI is doing for us. Again, we know that, for example, in Ghana, you have been doing what they call the zipline or so to deliver medical services to villages. You see, the drones that we used to have, if you drive the drone and it's going and then the community is such that the drone has to pass through over a forest, the drone can hit maybe a tall tree, okay, and then the drone will fall down. And so the medicine will not be able to be delivered. But with AI, we can then have cameras that are sensor for the drone. So as the drone is moving and you see that there was a tree in front of the route that the drone is taking, the drone itself will direct. Now we have drones that are behaving like that. So you see, it's about looking at our context, looking at our situation, and seeing how best we can use AI to solve the problem. Because if the biggest problem we are facing in Ghana now has to do about our survival and the environmental degradation, and there was a young person that has come out with an application that will help to identify people and the various illegal mining sites that are in Ghana and map them into a system. And so you are in a control room and you can detect who is entering which side of the forest. Then it will help solve a problem. And so understanding the context is very important in the way that young people will be able to develop tools, that is to solve problems in their communities and their countries. Again, there was a need for collaboration and partnership. And for me, that's the reason why that I've been very much enthused about the work of youth in AI. I believe that it's a conversation not just limited to Ghana, but it's a conversation that has to be broadcasted on the entire continent. Because young people have the ingenuity, they have the skills, and so they need the support. And so if 2 or 3 young people comes together and say that this is the vision they want to drive, then I believe that they are in a more capability to be able to develop solutions that addresses societal problem. And so they have to collaborate and then they have to partner. It's very important. Then there was also a need for developing solution that tends to be very accessible and also inclusive. Because, for example, we have different categories of society. And so if you are developing AI application, the variant of the society, like people who have blind impairment, people who have walking impairment, the question you have to ask is the software that you are developing, how is it being inclusive to these people? How are they able to use? And so for me, if you're a young person that want to go into this aspect, what I would say is that the opportunities are enormous, even though the field is now developing. But you can see that across the continent, so many countries are doing well. And young people are at the heart of driving these innovations in countries such as Egypt, in countries such as Morocco, in countries such as even Benin. You'll be surprised the kind of AI ecosystem that we have in Ghana, in Benin. And sometimes you'll be surprised that it appears to be even more advanced than what we are experiencing even in countries such as Ghana. And so the opportunities are enormous. And so we need more people into this space to ensure that the AI benefits both the continent and the country, and even the young people themselves, because that's the opportunity to create jobs for them.
Yes, thank you. So let me go to Emina and comes back to you again. So Amina, Madam Amina Salifu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So if you can hear me clearly, please can you tell us, introduce yourself and your background a bit for us to know you more?
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, when I saw my name, and then when I saw Mr. Richards, I equally read about him, his profile, and I asked myself, hey, Adiza, why will you pair me with a very prominent person? How will I cope? But I'm grateful for the opportunity. My name is Amina Salifu. My background is mathematics. I completed University for Development Studies. I did pure maths. My project was in linear algebra related to data science because of my curiosity. So I used to worry my lecturers a lot that they were just teaching us raw mathematics, abstract maths, and what is the relevance of this mathematics that we are actually learning? How do we apply it in real world? So in my final year project, I was asked to work on optimization, but because of my curiosity, I told my supervisor I was much interested in working in related courses like data science and stuff. Back then, my supervisor actually didn't have much knowledge on what I wanted to work. He asked me to go and look for my own research work and my research topic, and then come and discuss it with him. So I went and I got this application of linear algebra in data science, where I worked on where I used various big data methods like high principal component analysis, image vectorization, even without actually understand. I never understood them. I just applied it, and I looked for someone who helped me, and I applied it, and I went to explain everything to my supervisor, and he accepted the work, and that was it. Fast forward from there, I had the opportunity to attend AIMS, African Institute for Mathematical Scientists, in Senegal, where I had the opportunity to learn big data, machine learning, and then NLP. From there, I developed interest in big data again, but I had a challenge when it came during my research work. I wanted to work on a particular project. The supervisor was in France, but he's according to her, she said I wasn't good enough to work on that particular research. So I diverted my interest again to NLP, sorry, to IoT, Internet of Things. Actually, I didn't have much knowledge on Internet of Things, so I have to do serious reading and stuff, because when I gained admission, I actually gained admission to do strictly mathematical science, but not data science. But because of my interest and then my persistence, so I was given the opportunity to do the data science course rather than the mathematical science. So I did the IoT project, and thankfully I had many awards on that project. And because of data issues, I couldn't complete, like I couldn't get a practical version of the work, which I'm still working with. I'm still talking with Google. They are asking me to rather gather the data. But I also want them to give me the data so that to get an output view of the theoretical work that I did. And now I'm here in KUST doing computer engineering, and my research work is currently on NLP, specifically asset classification. Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Indeed, takes some of these loopholes to get to where you want to be. Sometimes it's very tough, but if you persist, you definitely get to your goal. So the first question I want to ask you, what are some of the most exciting real-world application of AI when it comes to higher research that you have been doing?
All right, thank you very much once again. I remembered when I was doing my master's distant project, there weren't really enough tools for, especially when it comes to literature review. But fortunately, at that time, we're still having Grammarly. So those days, I get a lot of papers and like exciting papers that actually in line with what I'm working on or what I intend to produce. Then you copy the contents. Then I try to rewrite it in my own understanding, and then kind of use Grammarly to just paraphrase whatever I've written, especially when it comes to the content. So now, because of AI, which is actually transforming not only in education, in health sector, agriculture, and many more. So now we have a lot of exciting tools, just like what Tawfiq said initially. We have a lot of exciting tools, especially when it comes to literature review and then summarization. So you can have a like large number or huge number of papers that you actually want to summarize. And let's say that you want to understand, or you want to read more than 20 or 30 papers. You see, that is really work. You have to read a lot, and sometimes you might read 2 or 3. You can even forget the first paper what you actually read. But because of AI, and then with the help of NLP, we are able to use tools like R discovering. I don't know how many of us have actually used R discovering. So I have used R discovering. I think that was last 2 years for my systematic literature review, where I was able to interact with a lot of papers and get summary, and then like the methodology of their ideas and stuffs. And then we also have something like semantic scholar, where you can get literature papers, where you can get normal papers from. And then we also have elicit, where you can also interact with papers, which actually help summarize related papers quickly and then interact with them. So we can't do away with Grammarly. We can't do away with Grammarly and then Tenity, because it actually helps when it comes to academic and then proving clarity and then coherences. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let me go to Mr. Richard Apau and comes to you again. So our boss, Richard Apau, please. So you want to know, as maybe new youth, you are coming, you are eager about AI, and we are in the universities and things. So what do you think? How can the universities as institution ensure there is privacy of data and security when it comes to AI research, AI in research?
Okay. So you see, I think that, like Amina mentioned, universities put in place so many things. But with respect to security of AI and all that, it basically has, like I mentioned, you see, data is everything that we do in the university. Is either we are generating the data ourselves or we are using some data that already exists. And so universities are supposed to adapt frameworks and guidelines that will help either protect those data to ensure that whilst we are using artificial intelligence, we are reducing the risk of data security and privacy. Because if you have taken a research from people, you are supposed to ensure the anonymity of the respondent, for example. Is that okay? Some universities already have ethical committees already in place. But I think that in the advent of artificial intelligence, this has to be overhauled in our various universities. For example, I'm nice in KNUST. KNUST, for example, has what we call the Turnitin. And the Turnitin, if you have a professor and you are a student, your professor can give you access to the Turnitin so that everything that you are doing, you can check. Turnitin also checks whether your work is AI generated. And a lot of times, students don't know about this. But once you put in your work, if the lecturer wants to see whether this work was written by AI, the lecturer will be able to see that. I had an occasion where I look at student work. Immediately I read one or two sentences. I noticed that the whole thing was machine generated. I decided that, okay, let me put it into Turnitin and check. When I check, Turnitin tells me that it's 87% AI generated, 3% AI generated and human refined, and then 11% human written. So it means that the entire work the person has sent, only 11% of the work was what was written by the person. And 3% the AI generated, and the person decided to make some modification into it. And so coming back to issues of data privacy and protection in the academic research is very important. And basically, it all has to do with frameworks. So our universities are supposed to have data privacy frameworks. Ethical committees exist, as I mentioned, at the graduate school level, they exist. I'm not too sure whether the various colleges of the various universities in Ghana or across Africa have ethical committees for various undergraduate projects. But for postgraduate research, I know that there are ethical considerations, especially those in the health. You have to go for ethical clearance before you are able to do certain things. And of course, once the technology is going to interact with either animals' data or with human data, then the issue of privacy of the data subject is very important. And it also comes back to regulation issues because, for example, the universities actually take data. They take data not only from students, but the research they do, they're either using animals to take the data or they are going to field to take data from people who live in the country. And so by law, they are supposed to also comply not only with the Cybersecurity Act of Ghana, they are also supposed to comply with the 2012 Data Protection Act, which mandates every data user, everybody, if you're a student and you are collecting data from people, there are supposed to be rules that guide it. That, okay, I'm taking the data. Immediately I'm done with my analysis. 1 month, the data will be deleted. So it has to be policy. Are you getting it? In Europe, somewhere, if in Europe, GDPR is very important. And so universities respect some of these things, that immediately your data analysis is done. What do you do with the data? And then also in using the AI to do your patterns, modeling and simulation, you have to ensure that you are not compromising the privacy of individuals whose data you have had access to. Because like I mentioned, sometimes you can have access to secondary data. And from the secondary data, you might want to use the AI to do certain prediction and patterns. So these are all considerations. So for me, I would think that our tertiary institutions will have to come out with policy guidelines on how students can make use of AI without necessarily compromising the privacy of the data subjects.
I think it's a very nice, insightful idea that you've shared. So as we are also listening, let's pay key attention to some of these things, because we are eager to use this AI and we have to use it in the rightful manner so that you don't end up maybe doing things that will even lead us to not cancellation of sometimes our thesis and other stuff. So let's pay key attention on all the discussions that is going on. Okay, let me come to Amina. So, hello?
Yeah,
Yes.
Eva.
Hello.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I also want to know from you the view. How can university ensure there is a responsible AI use among students and faculty when it comes to research?
Yeah, can you take that again?
I said, how can the university encourage responsible AI use among students and faculties?
All right. Thank you very much once again. Um, I think universities can encourage responsible AI usage among students, faculties, and many more by first of foremost organizing workshops on responsible AI usage. So currently in KUST, where I am currently in, that's the Responsible Artificial Intelligence Lab. So what most of my supervisors or my leaders, what they do is to organize various workshops where they actually introduce not only students and not only faculty members, department members about the ethical usage of AI, but they go beyond education. They go into they call farmers and then other traders where they introduce these people about AI and how to embrace AI in their various daily activities. And not just that, they also try to educate them on the ethical or responsible way of using these tools. And moreover, universities can also include AI ethics and then bias in as courses where students of interest, or not actually students of interest, I think, to my own opinion, this should be a compulsory courses where, whether you are coming from engineering background, maths background, arts, or whatever background you find yourself, because we all are embracing the use of AI. Everyone is using ChatGPT. Everyone is using Perplexity. So why don't we introduce, even if it's a 3 hours course, about the ethical usage of AI, where we introduce students even AI and then the responsible way of using this AI. We can't just say that people should do away with AI. People shouldn't use AI to modify their work. People shouldn't use AI to summarize their work. But we can also introduce something that can help these students to actually understand how to ethically use these tools. Moreover, for my end, mostly some of the data sets that are available currently does not actually represent the diversity of Africans. So what even the university, when I was trying to carry out my research, and they realized that the data set was not a representative of African language, or and I'm also in the responsible artificial intelligence lab. They were like, "Oh, Amina, you are using this data set, but we go out there to tell people that there's this ethics bias and in data set and stuff. Why don't we try to come up with our own data set which will be a truly representative of our own dialect?" So based on that idea, based on that push, I came out with my own stuff in my research work. Thank you.
Thank you So let me get to our boss, Mr. Richard Apple, to ask him. So boss, Mr. Richard Apple, so you want to know, as youth coming up, so what are the biggest risks that when you are using the risks that you are likely to face in using AI in academic research, and how, as young people coming up who may not be so much into this AIs or who doesn't understand this security and other stuff, how can we avoid those things so that when we use it in our research, we know we are using it ethically?
Anyway, I think this your question is similar to a question I have read in the chat. You see, there are risks of using every technology. Matters, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. I mean, one of the biggest risks of AI in academic research, for example, is issues of data quality and bias. And here, when I talk about data quality issues, you see, AI algorithm can perpetuate existing data quality issues, such as errors, inconsistencies, or missing values. Okay. It can also be biased in the algorithm because, of course, it is about what you put in and what you get out. Beyond the data quality and biasness, there is also what I call methodological limitations. Because, of course, there are a lot of lack of transparency issues. And then if you are not careful, you then tend to be over-reliance on the AI technologies. And like I already mentioned, it also brings ethical concerns because these are all risks. Once you think that you want to use AI, you see, I think that on our part of the world, we tend to get away with so many academic disintegrity issues in our part of the world. I mean, when I say in our part of the world, I'm talking about the global south. I mean, Africa, Asia, and where Ghana is part. But in the global north, academic integrity issues are a very serious matter. Is that okay? And so I do not see a situation where in the global north, a student entirely depends on AI to generate either a term paper, to generate an assignment, and then you submit. The consequences are there. But of course, in our part of the world, we do get away with some of these things because of the limitations that we have in our academic institutions. I will give you a typical example. If you go to maybe the computer science department of KNUST, they have about 600 students that have been admitted for first year BSc computer science. Ideally, they will divide the students into two or three groups, which then presupposes that about 200 students will have to be in one class. A lecturer will have to give an assignment. Is that okay? He would have to mark the assignment. There aren't even systems that have been developed to ensure that the students submit their work either using through Noodle application or any in-house developed application where the student will submit their work, where it will have even AI detectors or it will have plagiarism detectors. So that immediately the work is submitted, you, the lecturer, would then be able to see whether this work is human written or AI written. There was that lack of technology in most of our universities. And so students submit assignment 100% AI generated. They get away with it without any consequences. Because if a lecturer wants to check about 200 assignments that have been submitted to him, that's going to be a difficult task. But if we have a system that automates this submission process, so the student log in when the assignment is ready, they upload the assignment, and then the feedback is given to you, the lecturer. It makes the work simple. And so some of these structural challenges also then allow some of these academic misappropriation to happen on the side of the global south because there are infrastructural gap and there are difficulties that do not allow educators to be able to monitor some of these issues. By you also being a student, it is important for students studying and for students in this webinar to know that, look, at the end of the day, you are not just schooling and being in Ghana or being in Africa. Because like Barack Obama said, what is happening across the globe matters. What is happening in Accra is as important as what is happening in Washington, is as important as what's happening in London, Beijing, or Kigali. And so you have to know that you are training yourself and then you have to interact with the global community. And so the training you are receiving is very important, such that you don't allow machine to be doing the work for you just because there was loopholes in the academic system. And then it cannot be detected and then you go away with it. And so that ethical concerns are also there, because then we are looking at about the authorship and accountability. If you allow AI to do your work for you, are you the author? Okay, so these are the ethical concerns. And then again, other risk, the last risk I would mention has to do with issues of validity. I mentioned initially that AI, we train AI, like Emina is talking about, assuming he wants to deal with all languages, even the languages in Ghana, which is about 200. She has to train the data. And so she has to collect as many large data sets as possible. And then he has to consistently be training the data to ensure that the output is exactly what it is, if anybody is using that particular application that she would develop. And so that also has to do with validity concerns. And validity, anytime validity comes in research, then reliability issue also come, because these are two different issues when it comes to research. Your data can be valid, but it will not be reliable. Vice versa, the data can be reliable, but it cannot be valid. And so we have to achieve both validity and then reliability. And these are all issues that you as a researcher, you as a student, these are things that you have to pay critical attention to. Now, to avoid this, it's just basically about putting measures in place to ensure that, yes, you are having access to high quality data and you are training the data and you are following scientific procedure in training the data. And Amina has mentioned a key example of what his professor suggested, because he needed to go with the data and they noticed that the sample size was too small. Because at the end of the day, he's training a machine. And so the degree of error that can be tolerated have to be very limited, such that the outcome does not deceive the scientific community. So that is very important. And then I mentioned this from the beginning. You, the student, you, the youth that is learning in the university, have to know that AI must be used as a tool, not as a replacement of the human intelligence. This is very important. If you are able to come to realization that AI is a tool, but not replacing your human intelligence, then you'll be able to maximize and then have the benefits that AI addresses. And then, of course, we have to be able to ensure transparency and address some of the ethical concerns that are at risk. This, for me, I think are some of the risks and possibly how we can avoid that in the academic settings.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for idea that. So let me go to Amina. So Amina.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. Just a minute. So my next question is, I want you, maybe can you share with us? You said you've gone through, even from your first degree, your lecture was even not much into the project. The major challenge was working on AI, how you did overcome such a challenge.
Can you come again? I think your network, your voice went down.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I said from the first degree to this level, you have been facing some challenges when it comes to this implementation of AI. So we want you to share with us a major challenge that you face whilst you were implementing a particular AI and how you did overcome such a challenge.
All right. Thank you very much. So with my research and my recent research work that I'm currently doing, which is about language. So when you realize that, okay, I realized that there are a lot of data sets out there. Yes, there are a lot of data sets out there. Especially, I'm working on accent classification. So there are a lot of accented audio data out there, including that of Americans, British, and then Canadian. But when you look at for African, for African, the data set that I checked, the only speakers that we were having in some data set were just two accounts and then one Ewe. And then when you look at South African, the speakers were not even up to three. And Nigeria, there was not even a Nigerian speaker. And recently, I just realized that Nigerians too have their accented data sets, but which they don't share is with them. You have to write numerous emails to them before you get it. So I also looked at what other researchers are working and how they are solving problems, how they are solving problems when it comes to speech and then other related work. And then I use these models. So the first thing I did was to use the current state of the art model to try to mimic and get the results of what the paper was talking about. I realized that, well, it was actually performing very well on that particular data set. I was like, okay, so does that mean that it will work on like it will work on a typical Ghanaian English speaker, someone who has no kind of like educational background, or whose speech hasn't been affected by environmental factors and others? So I was like, okay, then I'll try and see if these models can actually try to transcribe or try to actually give me a better accuracy when it comes to a typical Ghanaian English speaker. So what I did was to first of all get the data set. So because the reason why I did so is when it comes to accent, there's a lot of variation. Even as we speakers, we those that are currently in this webinar, you realize that I speak with different kind of like accents. You speak with different accents. We speak with different accents, and these models have to actually understand some the nuances and then the variation in our speech for them to be able to perform accurately. So I did so by gathering my own data set, trying to fuse my data set with the existing data set that is actually out there. Even initially, when I used my the current state of the art model and I trained it on my data set, I realized that the model actually wasn't performing well. So meaning that we need to expose these models to our way of speaking. Our way of speaking. So in that essence, I came up with the data set, and then I also came up with a pre-processing technique for feature extraction. So what I did was to develop a cross native share extraction technique, not only tailored to Ghanaian English speakers. So when you pick that, you can be able to mimic in extracting diverse features from across different speakers using that particular technique. So along the line, I realized that the data set that was out there was actually more than my data set, because actually data set is expensive in Ghana. I literally have to pay some friends and colleagues to actually do this for me. And even though what I have now is not really enough, but still looking for resources because it was actually running on cloud and they were actually charging me for that. So now I'm looking for more resources to gather more data sets. Even the little amount of data that I took is currently on Kaggle, but still working with my supervisor to get resources to get more data sets for that. So along the development process, I have to use a technique that I call the weighted concatenations. The weighted concatenation on the minority samples so that they'll be able to stand with the majority samples I have at that time. And also I have to reduce percentage of the majority samples so that to be able to meet what I have in order to be able to give a correct result of the entire data set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me go to Mr. Richard Apple. So, Mr. Richard Apple, what will be your final take that you want us to take away when it comes to issues of cybersecurity and AI in general?
Okay, thank you very much, Evans. What I would say is that, you see, technology is constantly evolving, and as such, it is disrupting a lot of things. If any of you will have the opportunity, especially those in this webinar, I would advise that you go and read the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report. It's called the Future of Work report. And then you can see the top 10 most declining job, and you see the top 10 most increasing job. That is the job over the past year. It has received a lot of recruitment. And you will notice that the top 10 jobs are related to issues of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, data science, machine learning, AI engineers, data analytics. Are you getting it? And so that is the future we have now. Technology has become highly adaptable. And so it's taking over a lot of the risk-based job that human cannot do. I have always been of the view that these AI and cybersecurity are not taking over the jobs of people. It's not going to make people unemployed. It's rather shifting the job. So there was what we call job shift, and that is different from unemployment. The job shift basically means that if you are a data entry clerk, what it means is that you cannot have that job again because we have artificial intelligence that will now be able to categorize the data and do the analysis. So your process of typing the data will no longer be there. But mind you, somebody is now going to get employed as a data engineer or as a data scientist. So as you have lost your job, another person has gained your job. So it's about constantly rescaling and upscaling. It means that you could be trained in business, you could be in social science, you could be in agriculture. How you have to find yourself is the current job that you are doing. How do you become relevant in the event of AI or even the advent of cybersecurity? How can this technology upskill you in such a way that you continue to remain relevant in the work that you are doing? Like I mentioned, the space in AI, cybersecurity, machine learning, deep learning are such that the opportunities there are enormous. And so even as a country, as a people, if we pay critical attention to these things, it will solve a lot of our unemployment issue that we continue to face. As many of the young people can then learn skills in this area and be able to be empowered and become competitive on the job market. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this powerful idea. So let me go to Amina. So Madam Amina Salifu, please can you give us what will be your takeaway as we end this program in AI? What will be your final message for our audience as you end the final discussion. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Please, I hope you heard the question.
Sorry, can you repeat it again?
Yes. I said you want your final takeaway for our audience. What would be your final advice to us as we try to engage in a lot of AI activities and implementation and the way forward when it comes to AI?
Okay, so my final takeaway is we should be kind of more curious. So we want to learn more about we want to learn more about AI, and we've been using AI. Mostly when I join programs, workshop, people do complain to me that kind of AI is trying to take their jobs and what have you. So AI is here to stay, and then AI is here to make our work easy and then faster. But is the way and manner you uses these AI tools, and also the adaptation and then the curiosity of you, the individual. So as my boss rightly said, when an AI started emerging, a lot of people loses their jobs, and then a lot of people gain jobs. So with this, we should always strive to then try to learn new skills and techniques. You can be a distant what's the name? You can be a secretary in a company, but with you can be a secretary in a company which you have to think for hours and hours before you can draft something. But with the usage of AI, it's able to make your work faster. Mind you, you are not losing your job with that, because you're able to adapt to what is currently in the world. You're able to adopt it, and then you are able to make good use of it. And then you should be curious enough to know this tool and that tool and that tool. With that, you are able to actually adopt in the market, and you are able to stand when they are talking about technology like AI and stuff. And then secondly, for my colleagues here, we should at least have some basic fundamentals of something like programming, mathematics and stuff. With that, we're able to actually learn AI and then know how to implement it. Yes, ChatGPT can write an entire code for you, but to you, the individual, how do you use this code? It can give you the entirety. You can give it a prompt that, okay, write this and this. Do you really understand what the code that ChatGPT has written for you? So at least you should have some basic stuff that, even though you are using these tools, at least you should have fair knowledge on what it is giving to you. Moreover, you are writing a research paper. You've given it a prompt that write this and write this and write that for me. How do you verify the validity? How do you ensure that, yes, this thing that ChatGPT has written for you, it is accurate? You just don't take it and then pour it like that. So basically, in summary, just be curious and then be intentional. That's just it from me.
Thank you. So thank you very much for Mr. Richard Apau and Madam Amina Salifo. We thank you for such a wonderful incitement that you have given. And I'm sure majority of the youth here have taken notice, and you really work towards these ideas. Also, you have shared the link in profile of both Mr. Richard Apau and Amina Salifo. So you can connect, because now LinkedIn is also a word on this one. You will never know. Through this connection, you can easily be connected to an important assignment somewhere. So let's join, connect to them, and as they share more ideas and more insightful ideas from this, we can learn from them.
thank you so much for staying throughout this event and for your cooperation, your questions, and everything. I think people will be asking questions why there was no a Q&A session. Sorry, we are fast. Time is fast spent, and if you want your questions to be answered, you can just link them on social media. Go to their DM. Whichever question you want to ask, I think they will get a solution for you, and also network as well. Yes, it's very important. Okay, the rise of AI in research is inevitable, but how do we choose to use it? How we choose to use it and what truly defines its impact. If today's session sparked your interest, be sure to follow Youth in AI. Yes, it's very important. Earlier, I think Adiza was motivating us to join Youth in AI on all social media platforms. Look forward for more insightful sessions like this. And let's continue to shape the future where technology meets ethics, innovation meets responsibility, and knowledge knows no bound. Thank you for spending your time with us. Stay curious, stay responsible, and let's shape the future together. Thank you so much. See you next time.